Hello Formula 1 fans! This is another review video, this time about the Lotus Lamborghini in the 1990 Formula 1 season. The Lotus Lamborghini story is easily overlooked in the great era of the early 90s. Now let's get into it. The 1989 season was a disappointing year for Lotus. The car was mediocre, the engine was not competitive, and their drivers Nelson Piquet and Satoru Nakajima were not happy with the lack of progress.
Amazingly, there was no Lotus on the grid. Nakajima never got it together, and Piquet had this spin when overtaking Guillard. It cost him his chances of making the race after an engine problem in the other car. A disappointed Nelson talked us through what had happened.
I got in the dirty part of the circuit and I slide complete off.
Big disappointment.
Well, it's bad, it's not good.
But not the end of the world.
No, not quite.
Derek Warwick exited the pits after his tyre change innocently on the inside of the first corner, and he was assaulted by Satoru Nakajima's Lotus. Nakajima committed on the outside of the bend, as we'll see from the camera, at full speed, looks to turn in slightly. Warwick keeping tight to his line. Nakajima hits Warwick and he's out of the race.
The 1989 Lotus was powered by the Jet V8 engine. This engine had about 610 brake horsepower, but was not powerful enough to fight with the top teams, although it sounded quite okay, as you can hear right now. In order to try to make the jet engine more powerful, Lotus signed a deal with Piquet to research and develop a version of the jet engine with a 5-valve cylinder head. It gave the engine an additional 15 brake horsepower, but the Piquet project was cancelled after the forced departure of team manager Peter Warr.
There was a big change in the Lotus camp, for one of its venerable old faces had gone. Peter Warr, who'd spent most of his life with the team, had now left, replaced as team manager by Rupert Mannering, while new chairman Tony Rudd explained why he had taken overall control.
Well, our fortunes have been going downhill a little bit, and we've had one or two problems and one or two staff changes, and it appeared to the owners of the team that one of the solutions to them was to they read the motto on my office wall that what is it, old age and treachery will always overcome youth and enthusiasm. So they took it to heart, and here I am.
Down in the woods, however, something stirred. It wasn't a team picnic for Lotus, but a big announcement of their 1990 plans pulled together in a matter of weeks by Tony Rudd. Mauro Foggieri would be providing Lamborghini engines for Derek Warwick and Martin Donnelly to power their Camel-sponsored cars.
Nelson Piquet did not have a lot of confidence in the Lamborghini project, so he signed a deal with Benetton for the 1990 season.
All of which suggested that Nelson Piquet was out of a job. Far from it. He was off to Benetton, thank you very much. But as Nelson explained, perhaps it had been the right time to leave anyway.
For next year with Lotus, I think it'll be a very difficult year because they have this Lamborghini engine, and I don't think they will have too much development in that engine, and I don't know how difficult it'll be for Lotus next year. In that case, I had a very good offer from Benetton, and looks like the team will be very strong for next year.
In the 1990 season, the Camel-sponsored Lotus Lamborghini was driven by Britain's Derek Warwick and Martin Donnelly. The Lotus Type 102 car was a good-looking car, at least in my opinion. The Lotus Type 102 was designed by Frank Donnelly. Power came from the Lamborghini 3.5-liter V12 engine, which had about 640 brake horsepower, and it sounded like this.
Back towards the stadium, again up around 190 miles an hour. This is the quickest of the three chicanes. In fourth gear again, quick change of direction, then up the curve a little bit. It's hard to avoid doing that on the quick lap and qualifying tyres. It's probably slightly quicker to let the car ride up the curve, but not let the whole car get across the curve. Now, on the final straight into this stadium, quick fourth gear corner again, using every bit of the road. Now into third gear for this very tight and very demanding Sachs curve. Into fourth gear. This is the part of the circuit really that in the past didn't make any difference to the performance because it was really only one speed through here, but now with the aerodynamics in the cars it's becoming a really important part of the circuit.
The two McLarens soon established a healthy lead, and then Nelson Piquet and Thierry Boutsen found a way past Patrese as well. Further behind, Prost had fought his way up through the field to challenge Derek Warwick for 9th position.
Despite the beautiful sounds of the V12 engine, Derek Warwick had a difficult time with the car.
I made the decision to change teams from Arrows to Lotus for 1990 because they were still quite competitive the year before with Nelson Piquet. But again, I don't know whether bad cars follow me around, but 1990 was a disaster. The car was a disaster. It was flexing all over the place. It kept on braking. It had a 12-cylinder Lamborghini engine that was all noise and no go. It was too heavy, and it was just very, very difficult. I had a big accident at Monza where I went upside down.
Most of the field had completed lap 1 when disaster befell Derek Warwick at the exit of the Parabolica. The Lotus driver lost control of his machine as he tried to re-enter the pit straight. Instead, he careered into the Armco and ended up back on the track upside down. The accident looked horrific, and for some of the older fans watching, it seemed a terrifying reminder of the crash which claimed Jochen Rindt's life at the same circuit 20 years earlier. The red flags were a formality, the crowd happy to see Prost get a second chance. Warwick, meanwhile, had had a miraculous escape. He crawled out of the car to start his run back to the pits and the T-car. But what had been going through his mind when the accident happened?
Oh, many things really. Oh shit, things like that really.
Meanwhile, Martin Donnelly's season was a disaster as well.
I mean, the Lamborghini V12 sounded great fantastic. And any circuits that were tight and twisty, like Jerez, like Monaco, we could be competitive. But any circuits with long straights like Hockenheim or Silverstone, you know, you're just playing catch up. We were doing, I think, from memory, we had 640 brake max compared to the Hondas and the Ferraris. You were playing at it, you know. And we had our main gauge was against the Lotus car with Eric Bernard and I think Suzuki, and we always compared ourselves to those guys, you know. And bear in mind, we didn't realise when we signed the contract that Lotus was already financially strapped for cash because they didn't build a new tub. So the tub that we got into was a tub they built for Nakajima and for Piquet, who are like 5'7", 5'6", you know, like jockeys, and we were 5'10". So we never really got into the car comfortably.
On the 14th round of the Spanish Grand Prix, tragedy struck Donnelly, who had just renewed his contract with Lotus for next season on that Friday morning. In the first qualifying session, Donnelly crashed head-on into the outside wall right before the end of the session, when his left front suspension failed at turn 14 at top speed. There is no footage left of the moment, but according to the telemetry data, Donnelly crashed into the wall at a speed of about 225 kilometers per hour and was said to have received a shock of 45 Gs. The impact split the vehicle's carbon monocoque in two, and Donnelly and the seat were thrown onto the course. Donnelly was immediately taken to the hospital. He had multiple fractures all over his body and suffered major damage to his internal organs. He fell into critical condition for a while, but emergency treatment saved him from the worst. Later, Donnelly recovered enough to live a daily life and was given the opportunity to drive in Jordan's F1 car, but he was unable to return as a racing driver due to the remaining damage on his joints.
Here you can see Martin Donnelly talking to a young upcoming Mika Häkkinen in 1991. In 2011, Martin Donnelly did a demo run in his old Lotus. For the remainder of the 1990 season, Johnny Herbert replaced Donnelly. In the final standings of the 1990 season, only Derek Warwick managed to score some points, finishing a lowly 14th with 3 points. In the team championship table, Lotus Lamborghini finished 8th. After this disaster of its season, Camel left the team and so did the Lamborghini engines. Lotus' future in Formula 1 looked pretty grim after this, but that's a subject for another video. Thanks for watching.
We're riding with Derek Warwick now. We're coming down to the corner to start the lap after the start-finish line. And Warwick's there, he's in 4th gear, he's probably going up to, no, he's back to 6th for now. And let's see if he can draft up on that car just ahead of him. He'll be approaching 190 miles an hour at this point. Up to 195, it doesn't look like he's quite close enough to have a go. As he comes into this second gear chicane, back down to second, hard on the brakes, 50 miles an hour through this one now. Back on the power. 3rd gear, 4th gear, 5th gear, 5th gear, and he's using about 13,000 revs with his Lamborghini V12 engine here. Into the second chicane, second gear once again.